We're trying to take that convenience ask, bring it into our shopping centers, activating our peripheral land, and bring that all into a one-stop shop shopping experience for our consumers. And the early results of us doing it has been very positive.
You're listening to Retail Remix, your inside access to candid conversations with the people shaping retail's future. Here's your host, Alicia Esposito.
We cover the evolution of the shopping mall quite a bit on Retail Touchpoints. And I'll be honest, anytime we do, it is one of, if not the most popular article of the week or even the month. I mean, it's obvious. Everyone wants to know, what is happening with shopping malls and shopping centers? What do they look like today? What will they look like, or could they look like tomorrow? I wanted to dig deeper into this very topic with someone who is shaping the future of the shopping experience for these destinations. And that's Justin Stein, Executive Vice President of Leasing at Tanger. Now, if you read Retail Touchpoints, you may have seen some of our stories covering Tanger's approach and how they're aiming to think less like an operator, traditionally speaking, and more like a curator. Now, as the EVP of Leasing, Justin is kind of playing a critical role in this process. He and his team are thinking about the tenant mix. Where should we lean into retail versus restaurants versus experiences? And what do our consumers want right now? And what do they want tomorrow? And how will that shape our strategy moving forward? How do we court the right tenants? It was truly fascinating to sit down with Justin, really talk shop, so to speak, and learn a little bit more about his work and how it influences the big picture of the Tanger business. Listen in, because if you are not in a shopping mall or shopping center today, but maybe you want to be, or you're kind of assessing your strategy, I think he is going to provide some intel that will be very enlightening for you. Justin, thanks so much for being on the show. It's so great to have you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being such a great advocate for our industry.
Well, I try. Honestly, I'm a consumer first, but I always love speaking with folks like you who are really doing some fascinating things to move the industry along. So let's start with your role then. What does your day-to-day look like as EVP of Leasing at Tanger? And more importantly, how do you personally measure success in this industry?
Sure. So my primary responsibility is overseeing all aspects of leasing of our portfolio that consists of 40 centers. And today we operate in 20 states and Canada. And that incorporates and encompasses everything from negotiating new leases with prospective tenants to managing renewals and right-sizing our existing brands. You know, on a typical day, I spend a significant portion of my time reviewing market data and sales reports to formulate leasing strategies tailored for each individual property, because we lease each individual property as its own. And a core part of my role is maintaining close relationships with our tenants, because we are in the relationship business, and those relationships are both current and prospective tenants, because ultimately our goal here at Tanger is to future-proof our centers, and we do that by attracting an extremely diverse lineup of tenants.
Yeah, and I know we've covered a lot of the work Tanger has been doing to become more of a curator, so to speak, versus just a traditional retail destination. So I'm excited to dig into some of that with you, get a peek behind the curtain, so to speak. And, you know, we're recording this chat at the end of May, like literally the last day of May. So we're a few weeks from Tanger's Q1 2024 earnings report, where management reported that it would be increasing its full year guidance, which is very exciting. And your CEO specifically pointed to how elevating and diversifying that tenant mix remained a strategic priority, like you alluded to in your last response. So you've been with the company for about 3 years now, and I would love for you to share any insights or just, firsthand opinions on how this strategy has evolved or even been solidified over that time? Because like I mentioned, we've been covering this work that your team has been doing. We've been covering the progress, but I'd love your take since obviously you're experiencing it firsthand.
Sure. And thank you for acknowledging our results from the last quarter. It's something that we're extremely proud of as an organization, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow our business. But when it comes to some of the commentary that our CEO, Stephen Yalof, has mentioned, and I'll reiterate, elevating and diversifying our tenant mix continues to be a key strategic priority for us. When I joined the company, as you mentioned, about 3 years ago, this company was already focused on curating a more diverse experiential tenant base well beyond the traditional outlet center. And since I joined, we've really doubled down on that strategy as the consumer, and listening to the consumer preferences, and then listening to and watching the shopping habits continuing to shift in our channel. And look no further than COVID, and COVID really expedited that shift. And why is that? Well, if you take a look at where our centers are geographically located, whether it's Charleston or Hilton Head or Savannah or Palm Beach, a lot of people had their secondary residence in those markets. And what COVID did was it allowed people to work remote, as you know, and people eventually moved from their primary residence to their secondary residence where our centers are located. And so when that happened, we started to see shoppers shopping our centers more often and get repeat shopping visits in the same week. And so we listened to our consumers, we listened to what they wanted, and we started to evolve and elevate and diversify our tenant mix from that point, adding more service-related retail, added more convenience-related retail, and going after uses that our consumers were asking for and that they wanted on a daily basis. So COVID really expedited that, but we're very proud of the diversification efforts and the elevation that we've done over the last 36 months.
Yeah, it's been interesting to think about the ripple effects, so to speak, from COVID, not just from where are people living, but also how are they living? How are those bigger contextual insights impacting our decisions as shoppers, right? And, we obviously have been covering the evolution of the mall quite a bit, and also the work that other operators are doing, and more importantly, possibly how brands and retailers are thinking about where they're quote unquote showing up and in which properties and why. And I would love to dig a little bit deeper into this idea of Tanger being less like a traditional operator and more like a curator. That was honestly the headline we used when we kind of dug into this strategy, and it got quite a bit of attention. And I think it's because of it's such a departure from the traditional model, so to speak. So how does this concept of thinking more like a curator inform or influence your role and how you lead your team? Because I feel like any good strategy, it really needs to have legs across the organization.
Yeah, I love that comment, act more like a curator, because that's us. We take such pride in our ability to merchandise properly. And I truly believe that's what sets us apart from our competitors out there. In fact, one of our senior vice presidents of leasing on our team, Bibbit Mason, that's her primary responsibility, is to lead the merchandising efforts in and around our portfolio at each individual asset. And she and the rest of the leasing team do a great job of executing to that strategy. And what we've found is that a lot of brands out there like to be in and around similar like brands within the center. Consumers like it. We listen to the consumers. They want that as well. And so merchandising, whether it be by adding more food and beverage or adding more entertainment or adding additional service-oriented retail, whatever it may be, we take such pride on it, and we feel like we do it better than anybody else out there.
I love that. So what does that tenant mix kind of look like for Tanger today in terms of balancing it all, so to speak? Because on one hand, we have our established legacy type retail brands. We're seeing more emerging brands that were largely digital and now are venturing into physical and are looking to malls to kind of get embedded into new markets. And of course, there's entertainment, restaurants and even local activations. I'm sure it depends probably on the area that we're thinking about or talking about, but is there like a benchmark or ideal way that you're thinking about that mix today?
The ideal tenant mix needs to strike the right balance, as you said. And we feel it's important to maintain a strong balance of the high quality brand name retailers that have been the bread and butter of our portfolio for decades. Mix that, as you said, with emerging digitally native brands, popular athleisure brands, health and wellness operators, and food and beverage and entertainment. We could dive into digitally native. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept Somersault. Somersault was a digitally native only online brand. They did their first brick and mortar store with us in Myrtle Beach. And they've since expanded into 2 additional centers in our Nashville asset and Palm Beach. And so the digitally native brands like our portfolio, they love the open air aspect of the portfolio. They love the fact that we bring in 60 million cars and 150 million visitors to our assets on an annual basis. So you put these digitally native brands and our heritage brands and the food and beverage and entertainment. You mentioned entertainment. We did 2 Dave & Buster deals last year. Those are driving a tremendous amount of traffic. You put that all together, and that's what helps drive excitement to our assets. And so we want to be properties. We want to be operators, and we want to listen to what the community wants. We want to be part of the hub and spoke of the community that we serve. We want to provide full day engagement, not just a shopping experience. We want people to hang out all day long, and that's what we're creating here at Tanger.
Awesome. I love that example. And I'm always interested in this idea of like non-traditional tenants, because we've seen, again, different destinations take different approaches. Some are leaning more into community-driven spaces, that it's just where those events take place, and they try to bring in local organizations or just people who want to host events there, media companies. So a very interesting angle there. And then others want to make it more focused on artisans that are part of the local community. So are there any like non-traditional tenants that Tanger has been leaning into at certain centers? Anything new or interesting that you're trying to incorporate into this mix to, again, make it feel more community driven, aligned more to, the local nuances, tastes, and preferences?
Absolutely. We talked about the entertainment uses that we're adding to our assets. We talked a little bit about our food and beverage. And when it comes to food and beverage, we are doing deals on our peripheral land with full service sit down restaurants. Like Shake Shack joined us in San Marcos, Texas with a drive-through. They also joined us in Nashville in an inline unit. We've done deals with Cracker Barrel. So there are a lot of food and beverage operators that are starting to join us throughout the Tanger portfolio. We talked about entertainment. And one category that we started to do more and more business with is in the health and beauty category. It's one of those categories that's been lacking in the outlet channel, but we feel like we've cracked the code over the last year and a half. The beauty and personal care market is rapidly growing. In the US in 2024, total sales are expected to exceed over $100 billion. And so I'm proud to announce that we are going to be opening 5 new Sephora deals in our portfolio in 2024.
Oh, great.
And what we like about Sephora, Sephora being the largest specialty beauty retailer in the world, and Tanger being the best operator of open air shopping centers, we just felt like it was a perfect marriage for the 2 companies. And what we like about Sephora is that they're going to bring an elevated and aspirational beauty experience to our centers, bringing in brands like Versace, Jimmy Choo, Hermes, Gucci, Burberry, and Carolina Herrera. We're excited to bring those brands to our consumers. It's something that they've been asking for, and we're really proud that we're going to be able to deliver those first 5 stores later this year.
No, that's great. And I feel like anytime Sephora is involved in a partnership or a deal, it's usually a slam dunk for all parties involved. So congratulations to you guys. That's great news.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, it's going to be a great relationship. We love the elevation and aspirational aspect that they bring to us, and they like the incremental consumer that we're going to be able to bring to the asset. So it was just a perfect match.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that a big part of your job is looking at market trends. And what I find most exciting and interesting about looking at brick and mortar and mall operations and shopping destinations specifically is, you really need to understand that big picture of the consumer, right? It's not just, focusing on one type of individual or one market segment, right? Like if you really want to serve the community, you really need to understand the diversity of the community and those local nuances, behaviors, intricacies, like the things that make them tick, right? Like how you can really become that go-to destination for anything they could possibly need, especially for Tanger, I'm sure, because now you're leaning into entertainment and restaurants and all of these experiential aspects. And I'm curious, are there any notable trends you've uncovered, anything you've learned about consumers that have helped kind of reaffirm or elevate this strategy? Like, what could you share with our audience about how consumers want to shop, especially in an environment like a Tanger property?
What our consumers have been saying to us is they want more convenience. They want a one-stop shop destination for all of their shopping needs. They want to be close to home so that they can fulfill multiple needs at once. And that's why we're doing deals with hair salons and nail salons, financial service institutions. We talked about family sit-down restaurants and entertainment. And so we're trying to take that convenience ask, bring it into our shopping centers, activating our peripheral land, and bring that all into a one-stop shop shopping experience for our consumers. And the early results of us doing it has been very positive.
Well, that's great. And I'm curious because we were talking so much about Tanger's strategy and vision and how you're bringing so many different types of businesses and experiences into your properties. I'm always curious, like, what the feedback is on the brand side and the restaurant side, the people who are leasing this space, right? Like, are these businesses buying into your vision? What types of conversations are you having with them? Because I'm sure, and like maybe it's wrong of me to assume, like obviously a more curation-driven experience means more people are spending more time there. There's more reason for them to come and they feel more immersed in the environment, which is ultimately better for the brand, right? But I'm curious, like, what are you hearing from the brand and retailer's perspective? Largely since that's a big part of our audience, I'm curious, how have those conversations gone as far as explaining the strategy and the vision behind Tanger becoming more of a curator versus just a standard operator?
Yeah, both the retailers and the consumers are thrilled with our portfolio diversification efforts. You mentioned increased dwell time. That's something that we're really focused on. What kind of uses, what kind of concepts, what kind of brands can we bring to the asset to increase that dwell time? And so the retailers are loving what we're doing. They see that we're driving traffic, right? So we feel that it's our job to drive traffic to the centers, and it's the brand's job to convert that traffic. And so that's why it's mutually beneficial for both of us to work together from a marketing standpoint, from a leasing standpoint, and from an operating standpoint. So the brands are thrilled with our efforts, and they also like the fact that we're constantly introducing new brands to the portfolio. And we've introduced over 250,000 square feet of new brands to the portfolio over the last year and a half. So we're evolving, we're being innovative. We're not just sitting back and waiting and renewing tenants as they come up for expiration. We're bringing newness into the portfolio, and our retailers love it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, obviously consumer insight, consumer research is a big part of your process. Do you ask your tenants at all, or potential tenants, what other brands are they watching? Where are the possible adjacencies? What kind of feedback loop, I guess, exists with your brand, retail, and restaurant partners around maybe what they would like to see as part of the tenant mix?
It's something that's very important to us. We spend a lot of time with our retailers. It's actually another way that we set ourselves apart from others. We're constantly visiting and meeting with the brands and hearing who do they like to be next to? Who do they want to be with? What markets are they thinking about expanding into? How can we help them with their expansion needs? So we have our ear to the ground. We're constantly listening to them. And it's something that the brands are very receptive to because they want to be successful, just like we want them to be successful. So any and all information that we can share with each other in order to help drive sales and traffic is something that we're constantly aligned with our brands.
Oh, that's great. And what is your approach for courting possible tenants? Like, are you seeing or finding that certain brands are proactively reaching out to Tanger because they see the strategy and they want to be a part of it? You may not be able to connect those dots, and sorry, I'm asking this out of left field, but I'm curious, what does that process look like for not just identifying who you want involved, but actually getting them into the fold and getting them excited about possibly being incorporated into these experiences?
Yeah, we have the attention of the market. Brands are noticing what we're doing and they want to be a part of it. So we're definitely getting more inbound calls than we ever have. And we just came back recently from ICSC Las Vegas, and It was a phenomenal show. And we had probably about 30% of our meetings were with new tenants that don't operate with us today. So obviously there are brands out there that see what we're doing. We're getting their attention. They want to be part of this movement. And then also, we're constantly analyzing our consumer and the trends that are going on out there. It's important to know that our leasing team is spread out geographically all over the country. We have people in Hilton Head. We have people in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Indianapolis, Indiana, and everywhere in between. So we have our ear to the ground across the United States to get in front of these emerging brands. We hear what's going on in these markets. And then once we hear that something is coming that is starting to pop up in Miami or LA or New York, we get out in front of it because introducing these new brands and staying new and relevant is very important to us.
No, that's great. And obviously, the physical space is the most critical part of the puzzle, so to speak. But, you need some sort of digital strategy, right, in order to raise awareness, get your brand and all of your tenants kind of front and center, especially in this bigger conversation of the new mall experience, right? Like we've seen so many articles and so much analysis around how Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, right, are looking to shopping malls as the community hub, which excites me because that's kind of how I was raised. So I'm curious, how is Tanger thinking about this broader omnichannel strategy to attract, engage, and retain consumers, and most importantly in your world, right, get people to experience all of these great tenants?
I first want to comment on, you brought up Community Hub, and I think it's important to call this out. And you can look no further than to what we just executed at our new ground up development in Nashville, which opened up in the fourth quarter of last year. The curation of the retail mix was an amazing curation of both local, regional, and national tenants. We added about 20,000 square feet, or 7% of our GLA was dedicated to food and beverage. And this was all done around an amazing green space, or community space, as you call it, where this green space has a kids' play area. It's where the food truck festivals come up. It's where people can play cornhole. It's where people can sit on Adirondack chairs and watch the large screen TV that we have out there. So like on Sundays, people can go watch the football game and have lunch while other family members can go and shop their favorite brands at great values. So community space and green space and community hub is very important to us here at Tanger. And Nashville is a great example of how we've executed to that. As far as your omnichannel question and how we think about omnichannel, we want to reach our consumers before they come to a Tanger center. And so we've invested very heavily in upgrading and updating our website. And we want consumers to be able to shop their favorite brands, potentially even buy online, pick up in store, or curbside. So it's something that we're focused on and we're investing in. We even rolled out last year our Tanger loyalty program. The loyalty program has proven to be an amazing technology advancement of this company. It's where consumers can get additional sales and additional value at the cash register above and beyond what they're getting and seeing in the store. So we are very focused on advancing our technology. We're very focused on enhancing our omnichannel experience and reaching customers before they even get to a Tanger center. And we're going to continue to look into that and expand in those areas in the years to come.
Oh, that's great. Well, so many exciting things happening in the world of Tanger, Justin, and I appreciate you sharing such insight into not just the new additions to your properties, but also what your priorities are moving forward. I guess to close us out, I would love your thoughts, again, because you're looking at this through the lens of leasing and, again, shared such great insights into the role that you play in this bigger vision for the business. So I want to ask about any tips or recommendations you may have for the brand and retail executives listening right now that are thinking about their broader brick and mortar strategy and where they show up, how they're investing in their mall presence. Like, how can they find the best fit and partner as they expand into these environments? Again, because it is evolving so quickly. I mean, other than, hey, check out Tanger, right? But is there any closing advice that you would share with them?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, know your customer. Understand your target audience. They need to understand the tenant mix. We talked about merchandising and how much of importance and focus we put on it. You want to be in and around where other tenants that complement your brand are. And last, invest in your stores. What we're seeing is, especially in our channel, are the brands that are investing in their stores, from lighting packages to the technology in their stores, to the flooring, to the systems that hold the clothing or shoes, the racking systems. Invest in your stores. The stores, the people who are investing in their stores are seeing their sales increase. And it's something that we believe consumers are seeking as well, is an amazing in-store shopping experience.
Wonderful. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you taking the time out. We don't often get folks from the worlds of malls and these bigger shopping destinations on the pod. So I appreciate you taking the time out. And of course, sharing this really fascinating sector and function of these institutions, because there's so much work and thought and intention that goes into creating these experiences, right? Because product ultimately is what drives it all. And if you don't have the right mix, then you don't have the right people coming in. So thank you again so much for taking the time out. It was so lovely chatting with you.
Thanks for having me. And thank you for showing interest in Tanger and letting us explain to your listeners on how we're evolving as an organization.
Yeah, and I hope we do keep this conversation going. We're going to include some show notes, some links to our past coverage of Tanger, just so folks get the full context of our conversation. And of course, we'll be sure to tag Justin and Tanger on LinkedIn. That way, if there are any follow-up questions or conversations that happen around this very fascinating layered topic, we can keep that conversation going. But otherwise, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners, about this episode and the show as a whole. So be sure to leave us a rating or review on your preferred podcast player. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, frankly, anywhere else. We're probably there as well. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on the show and maybe even share your thoughts on who should be in the hot seat in a future episode. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe. We have some new episodes coming to you every week. So if you do subscribe, you get them delivered right to your device for your listening pleasure. But that is it for us for now, everyone. Justin, thank you again so much for joining us. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening. We will see you next time. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on your favorite podcast player. Until next time, keep mixing it up.